Hey everyone, we're back with Dr. William Rush Dutton Jr. Yes, the father of OT. Today the assignment is the OTPF4 activity analysis. So let's go through the case study. Jerry is a 15-year-old freshman in high school who has Down syndrome. He loves sports and plays on the high school football team. He has 3 older siblings whom he's very close with, and is an uncle to a 1-year-old that he loves to play with when his sister and brother-in-law visit. Jerry is very open-minded and is used to doing almost everything on his own. He is taking algebra, biology, and literature with modifications provided by his school's IEP. This is the Individual Education Plan, which is mandated by federal law that all students with a disability have. He has to work very hard and has homework every night to review important vocabulary and concepts. Jerry has challenges with his working memory and expressive as well as receptive language. He learns best with visuals and video that accompany his coursework. Jerry is active in his church and loves learning about the Bible. Jerry reads well, but his comprehension is at the 5th grade level. An average day for Jerry is where he wakes up by his iPhone alarm, gets himself dressed, eats breakfast, takes his medication, brushes his teeth, and makes his lunch for school. He leaves at 7:15 daily to walk to the bus stop, and he takes the bus to school. At school, he attends classes and loves to eat lunch with his football teammates. His teachers are impressed with how independently he navigates the school building. There are co-teachers in every classroom, so they provide extra assistance for Jerry when necessary. Last week, he shared his 2-slide presentation on the food chain in biology. His peers shared a much longer presentation, however, they were very encouraging of Jerry's work. Jerry wishes he had more friends outside of school he could spend more time with. So Dr. William Rush Dutton Jr., how do the client factors impact Jerry's performance skills given this scenario?
Oh, Cody, I'd love to help, but I've been dead for 55 years. What you need to do is read something built on our set of values that the profession has held since its founding in 1917. Something that is occupation-based, client-centered, contextual, and evidence-based. This is the vision articulated in the OTPF4.
The OTPF4, what is that and how is that going to help me?
Well, the OTPF4 is broken down into 2 sections, the domain and process. The domain outlines the area in which we provide services, our professional expertise, and process, the client-centered delivery of occupational therapy services. The components of OT process, the evaluation, intervention, and target outcomes.
Dr. William Rush Dutton, this framework is impeccable. This means Jerry's client factors are affected by the presence of his disability, as well as his life stages and experiences. The factors affect performance skills that allow practitioners to create adaptations, modifications, and promote enhanced participation based on this transactional relationship between Jerry's client factors and performance skills. Now let's see if this framework can help us identify 3 clear client factors.
One of Jerry's client factors is spirituality. He is very active in his church and loves to learn about the Bible. The client factor impacts his performance skill of social development by being part of the church, something he can attend with like-minded individuals, studying the religious text together. This gives Jerry a personal search for purpose and meaning in life while instilling great values and guidance in his daily life. In the church setting, a social skill that may be impacted, the OTPF4 describes as matches language. In the church, it's important to match the tone and vocabulary that is socially acceptable for church. Another clear client factor of Jerry's is his values. Jerry is very family-oriented. He has a strong commitment to family as a younger sibling, as well as an uncle to a 1-year-old that he loves to play with when his sister and brother-in-law visit. So having 3 older siblings that's mentioned that he is very close with, this would indicate that family is something that's very important to Jerry. Another client factor of Jerry's that impacts his performance skills is higher level cognitive. This impacts his performance skills surrounding his education. When Jerry shared his 2-slide presentation I mentioned earlier on the food chain in biology, his peers shared a longer presentation. In regards to higher level cognitive, it was the executive functioning that would be more difficult because of Jerry's disability. This is because a presentation is a lot of work. This involves planning, organizing, and prioritizing. The performance skill impacted by the hindrance of executive functioning is Jerry's process skills. The OTPF4 categorizes this process skill that is hindered as accommodates. Jerry's work is accommodated, with his assignments being modified so he can better understand the material. His accommodations are set forth by his IEP that is mandated by federal law that all students with a disability have. Another client factor of Jerry's is the body function pertaining to psychosocial, because Jerry struggles with expressive and receptive language. Integrating the mental functions that lead to expressive and receptive language are important in establishing interpersonal skills needed to establish reciprocal social interactions. More social interaction is something Jerry wants to have more of outside of school. This would have an impact on his performance skills the OTPF4 categorizes as HEEDS. During social interaction, because of his disability, Jerry may have trouble giving enough information to get what he needs out of the discussion or to get to the intended purpose of the interaction. Jerry's routines include following a morning routine he performs independently, waking up on his own alarm clock on his iPhone, performing his ADLs such as getting himself dressed, eating breakfast, brushing his teeth, as well as his IADLs of taking his medication, preparing his lunch for school, all the mentioned occupations done completely independently on a daily basis. An example of a group routine Jerry enjoys is participation in eating lunch daily with his football teammates. Jerry's performance patterns includes his role as an uncle, a student, a sibling, an athlete, and a friend. One of Jerry's most impacted occupations is education. The OTPF4 categorizes as formal education participation. Jerry's personal factor in education as a freshman in high school and having a student role, the client may struggle most with high-level cognition and the specific mental function of memory because of his diagnosis with Down syndrome. More specifically, it is his working memory that is hindered. Since Jerry is taking classes like algebra, biology, and literature, it's likely much of the instructions for the day's lesson will be purely verbal. For Jerry, it is important to support learning by using approaches that do not put an excess demand on his working memory skills. His environment will be key in this given occupation to give Jerry the additional support that he needs. With that being said, in the OTPF4, the two environmental factors that are applicable are products and technology and the component of education. Jerry learns best with visual aids and videos, which are different processes and methods for acquiring knowledge through these visual aids. It is important to understand the educational task at hand to determine how much multisensory processing skills are required. The other environmental factor is Jerry's support and relationships. This is displayed when Jerry presented his 2-slide presentation on the food chain in biology. His peers were very encouraging of his work. Peer support is very powerful and will help build Jerry's confidence in his work. A possible modification to enhance Jerry's life could be to ensure that his learning is multisensory both in school and at home. Perhaps when he's going over his vocabulary terms at night, he can trace the letters in the air with his hands, as he says the word out loud, and see an image of its meaning. Another modification Jerry can use would be to try adaptive equipment that can assist him, such as an iWatch or an iPad. We already know he uses his iPhone for an alarm clock, so an iWatch or an iPad can link directly to his phone, and since he's already familiar with Apple devices, it won't take long to learn the new technology. He can then get times tables, clocks, or scheduling apps that will be useful since he's a strong visual learner. For him to see the clock face or timetable visually, it can assist him in understanding and remembering the information. So let's go over my client's personal factors. Meet Jerry. Jerry is a 15-year-old boy. He is the youngest of his siblings, having 3 older siblings he is very close with. He is very independent-minded, doing almost everything on his own, and works really hard at these academics, reviewing vocabulary and concepts every night. Jerry's education involves being a freshman in high school. Jerry is an athlete playing on the football team and loves sports.
So how does this information impact Jerry from the perspective of the OTPF?
From the perspective of the OTPF, when we look at Jerry's limitations of certain process skills that impact performance in occupations at school, the OTPF allows practitioners to all have a common understanding and all speak the same language. So instead of focusing on what Jerry can't do, we look at the client factors, take a look at the occupations he's involved with and what is important to him, and discuss those client factors and link them to his performance skills and how that will impact his occupations.